it was revealed to me that it's time for us to move on and take this thing to the next level. And so what I want to do is I want to begin to introduce a conversation with you about miracles. Right? Because one of the things that is the case, if you are being what you are, is that you have the ability to create miracles because you're the creator, right? And there is a way to approach that. First of all, to understand what the miraculous is a good place to start. So a miracle is something that's not supposed to happen, right? A miracle is something that, according to the reality that everybody agrees is what reality is not supposed to happen, right? And so it's not, a miracle is not something that's going to come from the default state. It's not going to come from thinking. It's not going to come from changing things. So to create miracles, you have to, first of all, be yourself. So a miracle comes from nothing. That's what's miraculous about it, right? It comes from nothing. And the nothing it comes from is you. So I'm inviting you to begin to exercise your God-given ability to be creative and cause miracles. So one of the things that is necessary in order to be who you are and in order to cause miracles is forgiveness. And the definition of forgiveness that I am using here is not the one that people normally define forgiveness to be. The definition I am using for forgiveness is when you forgive, you simply remember. To forgive is to remember. What do I mean? To forgive is to remember the truth. To forgive is to remember who you are. So who are you? Well, the clearest definition of who you and I are is love. So if to forgive means to remember, then what are you remembering? You're remembering who you are. You're remembering that you are love. And the love that you're remembering that you are is unconditioned love. It's unconditional love. And you're remembering that before you became conditioned and before you were indoctrinated and taught to believe what you are as a body and to believe what you are as a personality or a self-image, an image of yourself, right? That before that, what you were was love. And what you are now is love. So that love is obscured when the conditioning is running and you're giving the conditioning attention rather than the truth, rather than seeing what's not real from what's real. So the invitation is to begin to experiment. This is an experiment. And I invite you to begin to experiment with your life, with the opportunity to create miracles. And there is a way, I was almost going to say there's a way to do that, but that's not how it works, right? You don't do a miracle, right? You create a miracle. And so it's not something you do. Miracles are an expression of who you're being. Miracles occur in the space of love that you are when that's expressed. Miracles occur in the space of love that you are when that's expressed. So here's the way to experiment with this. And I'm serious. If you do this, you will begin to see that things begin to happen that are unexplainable. Things begin to happen that don't fit logic and reason. Things begin to happen that seem to come from nowhere, seem to come from nothing. So the way that you be the source, that when this source of love is expressed, miracles occur, is that you create a context, okay? You create a context. Now, the definition of a context is that which, when applied, I'm just making this up, but this is a usable definition. That which, when it's applied, gives meaning to what appears. Context is that which, when it's applied, give meaning to what appears. So, what appears is either a function of a condition. What appears is either a function of a condition, and a condition is that which has been conditioned, right? Like you're conditioned, right? So what appears, what you see, is either a function of your conditioning, is either a function of a condition, or it's a function of a context. Right? So I'm suggesting that you can actually begin to look through the lens of a context instead of a condition. And you can do this by intentionally looking at whatever it is in your life that would be seen through the condition of fear, right? And we know that the brain and the mind is fear-based, right? Conditioning is fear-based. It's survival-oriented, right? So the default state is the conditioned state. And therefore, what you see, what appears before you, is appearing from a condition of fear. The world you see is appearing from a condition of fear, right? So the experiment is to see if you can put a different lens before you, and that lens is a context of love rather than a condition of fear. And then look at whatever it is that appears before you through that lens, through that context of unconditional love, right? And see how it appears through that lens. Right? So remember, the first thing you have to do to make this possibility real is you have to forgive yourself, right? You have to forgive yourself, meaning, remember what I said the definition of forgiveness is? Remembering. To forgive yourself is to remember who you are before the conditioning occurred. That's the forgiving. You have to forgive yourself to remember who you are, and then with that available, with that presence available, right? That presence is love. That presence is love. That love is a context. Love is a context through which you can see what appears. And when you see what appears through the context of love, and when who you are is love, what appears is a reflection of love. So the experiment would be to begin to, as you go through your life, pay attention to what you're afraid of. Pay attention to what scares you. Pay attention to what confuses you. And given the situation that exists right now, politics is a good one, right? Right?
Right.
Right? So see how the situation that you have been seeing through your conditioning, which is fear-based, right? See how that looks when you look at it from love through a context, through that context of love. How does it appear? That's the experiment. A miracle would be that you don't do anything and everything's different. Wouldn't that be a miracle? Yeah. A miracle would be that you don't do anything and everything is different. Because the miracle that I'm referring to is the miracle of love, right? It's a function of who you're being. It's a way of being, not anything you do. And so the suggestion is, if the way you're being is the truth, if the way you're being is who you actually are, if the way you're being is who you remember yourself to be, which is forgiveness, right? Then that way of being empowers you to see heaven on earth. And that's a miracle. Yes? Without anything changing, everything stays the same and it appears completely different. That would be miraculous, wouldn't it? And if you apply that to the people you're close to, that you have judgments and evaluations about, that you have anger with, that you have fear with, if you apply that to your past, if you apply that to situations that you find yourself in as an experiment, and then notice what happens. Notice what happens. Notice if the miracle of transformation occurs in terms of nothing's changed and everything's different. Nothing's changed and everything's different, right? So the way it appears is a function of the context, and the context is love, and love is what you are. So that's a very highly concentrated bit of information, right? But it is possible for you to experiment with this. But in order to experiment with this, you're going to have to, because I can tell you that what I just got done sharing with you will be violently resisted by your mind. Violently resisted by your mind. Because if you experience the truth of yourself, the identity that your mind has it that you are, right, has to be seen for what it is. Right? The identity that your mind has it that you are has to be seen for what it is, and which means that it will be seen to be nothing but an appearance that is not real. So this is what I'm talking about here is based on the summary statement that is the preface to the Course in Miracles, for any of you who are familiar with that, right? Which says, you know, what is real cannot be threatened. That would be you. That would be love, right? And what is not real does not exist. And therefore, there's nothing to be afraid of. There's nothing to be afraid of. That is what the mind will start to do. It'll start to doubt it. It'll start to question it. It'll say, well, wait a minute, what about this? What about that, right? But what I'm suggesting to you is, rather than go into that, right? Rather than have this try to get this with the mind, right? Rather than do that, simply be what I'm suggesting is possible for you to be. Nothing can be easier because it's already true, yes? Nothing can be easier because it's already true. Miracles aren't a function of time. Miracles are a function of eternity. Miracles are not a function of time. Miracles are not a function of conditioning. Miracles are not a function of the mind. Miracles are a function of love, of self. They come from nothing. You cannot create a miracle from something. That would be change. You understand? You can't create a miracle from something. That would be change. You create a miracle from nothing. And the nothing you create the miracle from is love, and love is what you are. Therefore, nothing could be easier. Nothing could be easier than to create a miracle. But in the condition, in the mental state, in the condition of mind, the default state that most of us are living in, that makes no sense. Right? Makes no sense. Yes. Right. Well, what about this? What about that? You see, the mind will doubt, the mind will question, right? The mind will say, yeah, but how about, like that. So what I'm suggesting is simply do this as an experiment. And when I say do this as an experiment, it's not a doing, it's a being. See what it would be like to be unconditional love as a context through which you see what appears before you. Just see. Just see. Take something in your life, take a person that is difficult, take something you're afraid of, right? Take a situation that you find yourself troubled by or in conflict with, right? And just put the lens on that is the context of love, and look at that through that lens. Be forgiven. In other words, remember the truth of yourself, right? And then look through that context of love at what appears and notice what you see. You see, because the thing is this, if I interact with what your mind will bring up about this, then I'm going into your mind with you about it.
You're making it real.
Yeah, that's right. I'm acting as if what isn't real is real, right? And that's how we create false realities, by agreeing with it, right? But I'm saying stop agreeing with what's not real. Even if the rest of the world agrees with what is real, you don't have to fly with that flock. You can stop agreeing with what's not real, try it on, right? And see what happens, like an experiment. And if what happens reveals to you the power you have to create miracles, then you're on to something, aren't you? Right? And the thing about this is that as you do this experiment and as you experience the possibility that it is, right, it can actually become a natural expression of who you are in the world. And the most powerful way to learn something is to teach it, right? And the most powerful way to teach love is to be it. If you're being love in the world, right, who your being is teaching, in the most powerful way, right? Because it is offering the context in relationship to other people for them to forgive themselves. It's offering the context to other people for them to forgive themselves. Remember, forgive means to remember. For them to remember who they really are. But you see, the thing is this, we could say your consciousness, we could say your awareness, but the reason I'm saying that we're moving on now, that this is more advanced, right, is because now I'm saying your love. Why? Because that's powerful. That gives you power. To say your awareness, well, okay, I'm awareness, right? No, but love has power. Love has creative power, right? And that creative power need not be spoken, need not be acted out. It's a function of being. You're the atmosphere. When you're love, you're a context, like an atmosphere, that when people come into that atmosphere, right, they remember who they are just by being around you. Do you follow me? Just by being around you, they remember who they are. And it doesn't matter whether they get it understood. It doesn't matter whether they understand it. It doesn't matter whether it makes sense to them, right? Because this is all beyond all that. This is beyond the mind, right? The miracles that will happen around you if you do this experiment will be miraculous in the sense that what happens to people around you who come into the context that you're being, right, may not be understood to them or you, but nonetheless it reveals itself. It happens. That's miraculous, yes? So this is moving on, right? We're going on. We're going beyond just this conversation about consciousness and awareness, and we're taking it to the next level in terms of the possibility of being itself and the possibility of your being who you are and expressing that in the world, and then seeing how that has what appears to change. I'll give an example that we all can relate to, right? The example is named Donald. Okay? Right? Now, just like you, right, if I watch the news and if I listen to the voice in my head, which is fear-based, right, which produces conflict, anger, resentment, right, hostility, fear, right, then that's what manifests, and that's what I see when I look at Donald, right? And I'm in reaction, right? It's a conditioned appearance now. The appearance of who he is to me is a conditioned appearance, that he's separate from me, that he's bad, he's evil, he's wrong, I'm right, I'm good, right? So take that lens away and move the lens, the context of love, and look at him with unconditional love. Then what appears? It's not a question of you viewing anything, it's a question of how what appears. And what gives the appearance, right? You know, you give the meaning to everything that is, right? And the meaning you give to it comes from either the condition that you're seeing it in, or the context that you see it in, right? So you gotta bear with me here, right? Because you gotta bear with me here, because when you're presented with what I'm saying, right, the mind is going to produce the things that you're saying. That you're trying to get this with your mind. The mind can't get the truth. The mind can't get the truth, because the truth is alive. The truth is real. The truth is aware. The mind is not alive. It is not real. So that's why I said that you got to take this on like an experiment. You got to take it on like an experiment, and you got to be clear. It begins with forgiveness, remembering who you are, so that you have the power of love, right? And then express that in the context that you are when you look at what appears before you, and see what happens. That's all. See what happens. Don't worry about what you think about this. That's irrelevant. It's irrelevant what you think about this. So I know that this may be something that you have to really just get, not understand, not agree with, right? Just get it. And then experiment with it. And then see what happens. Well, if you see fear for what it is, what you see is that it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. It's not real. That's the point. That's the point. But you can only see that if you're looking at it from who you are. You can't see that if you're looking at it from your condition. You can't see that if you look at it from your mind. You can't see that if you're trying to understand it.
But we can't erase the condition.
It doesn't need to be erased. You may not be able to stop seeing a mirage, but you can know it's a mirage and you don't try and drink the water that's not there. Just all you have to do is see what this gives you the power, what this empowers you with is to see the truth, right? To see the truth. And the way you see the truth is by seeing what's not true. The way you experience what's real is by being clear about what's not real, seeing the illusion as an illusion. And then there's nothing to be afraid of, including death, because it's an illusion. But see, that's why I say you have to experiment with this, right? Because you have to test it. You have to test it, right? If fear arises, and it's coming from the mind, it's coming from conditioning, right? But you don't go into agreement with it, right? You don't look at it as if it's real, and you just keep expressing the truth. See what happens. See, I'm telling you that if you do this experiment, and if you, really do it, right? And you really pay attention and you really see what the results are, it will open up a whole new realm of possibility for you in your life. If you get this, if you see this, if you begin to experience the truth of this, right? Then the worst thing that could happen in that situation is what? Death, right? But if you see that death isn't real, then that's not a problem. And then miracles will happen. Miracles will happen. I invite you to take the invitation and to experiment with this. You know, you may have to go back and review some of the things that I've said, but you can look at the video to do that, right? Remember, you got to begin with forgiveness, which means to remember, and then you have the power to be the context of love, to see through at what appears, and without doing anything, what appears is different. That's a miracle.